Welcome back to Facing the Crowd. We're chatting to Calvin Joel. He is the co-founder of the Johannesburg Culinary and Pastry School. Calvin, growing up, what was your childhood like? What were your dreams? What was your environment and surroundings like?
You know, I think that one was, you were not exposed to a lot, so there wasn't really much of dreaming big because the surroundings never allowed you to. I think that's one of the negative things about poverty. And so after I went to the church, then I started, the guys that were there before us went to university. So that's when I started traveling as well. So there was youth camps, and you start, okay, there's more to this little world that was being created for us. And I think once I started going to the church and finding out that some of the guys that went to university, inquiring about that, there was one guy that went overseas, he was traveling with the ship. And those kind of things started triggering, listen, there's more to life than just what we have over here. So that sparked the interest of exploring and seeing what the world has to offer. And fortunately enough, I've traveled quite a bit. Been to the States, been to Australia, been to Spain, been to Germany, a good couple of countries. And I think the nice thing about all of that is if you start a business, and you come from a community like that where there's so much poverty, and if you can overcome a poverty mindset,
yes,
the world becomes your oyster.
Yes. Would you say you were always an entrepreneur, or is it something you honed along the way?
I don't think I was cut out for school. I'm not an academic guy. So when I went to high school, I had to work extremely hard just to pass and make sure that, because I think once after selling the drugs and going back to school, I became a bit more determined. So my goals were slightly different to get myself out of that situation that I was in. So I think I found that something that was my driving force. Poverty became my driving force to get myself out of my situation.
Who would you say has played a pivotal role in helping to influence your mindset for that matter, as you continue to strive and become better? I
think I've always, especially at the church where we were a whole bunch of different guys at exact same circumstances,
yes,
that actually made it. One of the guys was Basil Freitas. When I got to the church, he was at UJ. More or less the same, he was starting for a teacher then. So he had more or less the same background that most of us had. Obviously other guys went as teachers as well, and we had Twala that was working at Mnet. So there was a whole bunch of guys that were actually excelling. So the influence from them made me realize there's more to life than actually what we had at that point in time.
As you were growing up, what would you say was the biggest challenge or limitation you had to overcome within yourself that helped you to transcend your environment, your surroundings, and become the best you that you can be?
I think when I was in that situation, I never saw myself as poor. I don't know.
Okay.
I never saw myself as disadvantaged. Although at home there was a lot of challenges. So we were quite a few. We were about 11 in one house. Just my sister with her kids, her aunt with her kids. So it was, but I never saw myself as. I always tried to look for solutions. I don't know. It was always, how do I find a solution to get myself out of a situation? And I think when I was in high school, for me, my goal was purely a matter of getting myself out of that situation. And I thought, and education was obviously key to that one, and finding a career to, and one of the things that when I finished matric, so I moved back home, and on our couch, so I had to sleep in a lounge. By that time I was already big, so the kids were also bigger, so the house was really small. So I'm laying on a couch, on the floor, and this was when the kids went back to school. And one of the things that came to me was that no one could pay for my college fees. There was no money for me to go to university, nothing. And I made a promise to myself. I said, I will not let this happen to my kids, because that was a terrible feeling. That was low. And I think when that happened, it just drove me to become successful. So it's not even about money, it's making sure that my kids have something bigger than when I'm gone, to make sure that I leave a legacy. and make sure that we can impact other people's lives as well.
Within your industry or within the sector that you operate in, are there some people that you look up to and draw inspiration from, maybe in terms of their characteristics or the way they operate, that has inspired you along the way?
Yeah, I think the guys that mentor me was Linda Kotzer, there was Rudy Liebenberg. So Linda was on the national team, South African culinary national team. So when I met her, that was one of my goals. I achieved it. Went to the Olympics in 2012. When MasterChef came on, I was on MasterChef, a guest chef on MasterChef. So there was a lot of things that they've achieved, and I think their mindsets were completely different.
Yes.
And I always say that when I met them, they could see the potential in me, and they sort of like guided me as well, mentored me in the process.
We spoke to a few of your colleagues. We also spoke to someone who knows you on the more personal side. This is what they had to say about you.
Hi, my name is Dion van Skalkwyk. I'm friends with Calvin Joel. Calvin's wife, Jarlene Joel, and my wife actually grew up in the same neighborhood. They bosom buddies, in school buddies, so they come a long way. And almost 10 years ago, when Jarlene met Calvin, I was then introduced to Calvin. At that time, Calvin was not doing what he does now, but he was in the cooking industry as a chef, working for someone else. Person with a very kind heart, very introverted, but he's also a person that knows exactly what he wants out of life. And that's something that actually drawn me to Calvin from the minute I met him. And I would say I am more closer to Calvin now than, and I see Calvin more often now because we share the same passion compared to my wife and his wife. My idea of the industry that he's in was a very white male dominated field. On a yearly basis, when students graduate, we come in, and as an entrepreneur myself, we sometimes speak to these students and give them advice. And you look at the ratio, and I don't want to make it a racial thing, but a ratio of previously advantaged versus previously disadvantaged students is giving a platform to so many students to realize their dreams. All I can say is, wow, for now. Because whatever Calvin said he's going to do, he's actually not achieved it, but he's living it. You know, I can still remember him starting out on his own. His wife was still working. They were running a small bakery in the area that we originally come from, which is El Dorado Park. And from there, he wanted to go do something bigger. And we started here in the Maboneng precinct, and it's not at the location where it is now. It was at the previous location, and I know we had lots of challenges, lots of sleepless nights, but if I look at what that has, you know, that small mustard seed has grown into, I can just say, wow.
Calvin, back to the business side of things. Upon starting out the Culinary and Pastry School, what's the one thing you know now that you wish you had known upon starting it?
I think that one that's a tricky one. Some of the things obviously is when you start out you're quite naive. Okay. We never had any business experience prior to that. So there's a lot of things, I think, just decision making, a mindset, the way you approach certain things. And I think back then I wish I knew, understand the psychology of success, looking at the product and turning it into a profit. But I think back then I was more just driven of getting the thing going.
Okay.
So there was a lot of foolish mistakes that I made that might have worked in my best interest back then, because if I look at it now, I won't make the same mistakes of just go signing a lease and you don't have money to sign a lease, so those kind of things.
Well,
and I mean, we're talking here about it's a rent of 30 to 40,000. How am I going to make the money? So I think now I'll be a bit more cautious of making those kind of mistakes. It will be a matter of how do we plan it a bit better.
Upon starting the school, you mentioned that there were very few operating in the space that were black owned.
Yeah.
What sort of challenges did you face? How did your competition embrace you as a player as well?
I don't think they actually realized that we're going to succeed. They thought it was just a phase, and I think that's what happens to a lot of chefs. They start a business, and because things get tough, and they just go back to work. So a lot of my colleagues, the guys that I work with, the guys that I've been on national team with, thought it's just a phase he's going through. And because a lot of the guys actually just leave their businesses. And I made a promise to myself. I said, I'd rather go sell potatoes on the street than go work for a boss again.
Wow.
And because I think that psychology is, listen, you have to find solutions to make certain things work. And being in that kind of environment, that space, no one actually gives you the benefit of the doubt that you'll actually succeed. With no financial backing, with no one really believing, only you believing in yourself. So I think that became a key factor into the business, that I had to believe in the vision of this business.
What are the top 3 pearls of wisdom you'd like to impart, having garnered international experience and acclaim, that would you like to impart to budding entrepreneurs, people wanting to enter this sector and industry?
I think it's everything that you do has to be long term, and be persistent, and patience, because I think we want to achieve a lot in a short space of time, and everything takes time. To build a brand will take time, so there's companies that's been around for years. Mercedes-Benz just didn't pop up the other day. Took them a good couple of years. So when they jump into to becoming an entrepreneur, it's a long-term journey. It's going through the hurdles and the psychology of success, and there's a lot of psychological issues that we need to go through that hold us back from actually achieving our goals.
Yeah.
So you need to do some internal introspection as well. So there's a lot of factors involved in order to build something great. And I think if you talk to most successful entrepreneurs that's been in business for years, it's being persistent, that is the goal, that's the end vision, and pursue it.
And you're right, because there's no one else but yourself to blame when something goes wrong, and it's no one else to celebrate when the successes come. Now, on that note, you mentioned long term. What are the future plans for your school and for you at large? So
for us, we're looking at franchising the school all over the country. So that's a tall order. So we need to find people that have the same vision, same mindset, and just get more ventures going. I think entrepreneurial runs deep in my veins. I always look for challenges that looks a little bit impossible.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to make the sacrifice in order to achieve something great. One of the things is I don't want to be at the age of 80 and laying on my deathbed and say, I should have, I could have. It must be, I gave it my best shot.
Calvin, thank you very much for making time to chat with us and for sharing your story, and we wish you all the best with your future endeavors. Well, they say progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Well, we believe Chef Calvin is changing lives for the better. That's all we have for you this week. From myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the team, it's goodbye for now.